Hello po. I'm Lovely Angel Gabasin, BSIT 3, Block G, and this is my presentation assessment in System Integration and Architecture. Assessment 1. Why is form handling and validation important in web development, particularly in terms of data integrity and security? Form handling and validation are critical for ensuring data integrity and security. Proper validation ensures that user inputs meet required standards and formats, preventing malformed or malicious data from being processed. This safeguards databases from threats like SQL injection and prevents unauthorized operation. By validating data, developers can block harmful inputs, preventing vulnerabilities such as code injection and maintaining the accuracy and consistency of stored data. Number 2, what are some key Laravel features that help prevent security vulnerabilities such as SQL injection and cross-site request forgery when handling form data? Laravel provides several built-in features like prepared statement and query builder to prevent SQL injection. It also includes CSRF protection through @CSRF token to ensure that only authorized required can modify data. These features help secured application by making it difficult for attackers to inject harmful code or send unauthorized form submissions. Explain how you could create a basic form in Laravel using a Blade template and handle its submission in a controller. Include an example of how would define validation rules. To create a basic form in Laravel using Blade template, define the form in in a Blade file and set up a route and controller to handle the situation. The form collects user input, which is then sent to a specified route. When submitted, the controller validates this input according to specified rules before processing it, ensuring it meets the required criteria. How can customizing validation error message improve the user experience in a web application? Provide an example of how we customize and display validation error message in a Blade template. Custom error message help user understand what they did wrong and how to fix it. Custom error message make form more user friendly, reducing frustration by providing clear instructions. Number 5. What are the benefits of centralizing validation logic in Laravel applications? And how does this contribute to the maintainability of a web application? Centralizing validation logic Laravel allows to consistent validation rules throughout the application and reduce code duplication. It also simplifies future updates and maintenance. When validation rules are in a single location, they can be reused across multiple controllers, leading to cleaner and more manageable code. Assessment number 2. What is the role of middleware in Laravel's authentication system and how does it help protect rotates and resources from unauthorized access? Middleware in Laravel's authentication system act as a filter incoming requests, protecting routes and resources from unauthorized access by checking user authentication status. Middleware can be applied to routes to ensure that only authentication users can be access certain parts of an application. How does Laravel built-in authentication system handle user registration and login, including the management of session tokens and the validation of input data? Laravel's built-in authentication system manages user registration and login by validating input data, creating user records, and handling session tokens for authentication users. When a user registration, Laravel validates the input upon successful full registration, Laravel hashes the password and stores the user information in the database. During login, Laravel checks the provided credentials against the stored data and, if valid, create a session for the user. This token allows the user to remain authenticated across requests until they log out. Explain the importance of security measures like SQL injection prevention and XSS protection in login registration form. How does Laravel assist in preventing these vulnerabilities? Security measures like SQL injection prevention and XSS protection are crucial in login registration form to protect against data breaches and malicious attacks. SQL injection can compromise the database by allowing attackers to execute arbitrary SQL queries. Laravel prevents this by using prepared statement and eloquent ORM, which automatically escape input data. Number 4. How would you create and apply custom middleware in Laravel to restrict to a specific route based on how your user roles such an admin-only route? To create and apply custom middleware in Laravel to restrict access based on user roles, you would define a middleware class and apply it to the desired routes. This custom middleware check if the authenticated user has admin role. If they do, requests proceed. If not, the user is redirected. This helps secure specific routes from authentication access based on user roles. Number 5. In terms of scalability, how can Laravel's authentication system be adapted to handle a growing number of users and requests? Give example like session management or token-based authentication. Laravel's authentication system can be adapted for scalability by implementing session management and token-based authentication like API tokens or JWT to handle an increasing number of users and requests. Laravel's built-in session handling can be configured to use various backends like database to efficiently store session data as the user base grows. These strategies ensure that Laravel can manage increasing demands while maintaining performance and security. Assessment number 3. What are the key steps involved in implementing the create operation in Laravel, and how do blade views and form handling play a role in this process? The, the key step implementing the create operation in Laravel involves creating a form in a blade view, handling the store form submission a controller, and saving the data to the database. This process involved creating a user interface for a data input, routing the request to the appropriate controller, and implementing validation in storage logic, and the controlling ensuring a smooth workflow for creating new records. Number 2, explain the importance of data validation and sanitization in CRUD operations. How does Laravel ensure security when handling user input during these operations? Data validation and sanitization are crucial in CRUD operations to ensure that only clean and valid data is processed and stored. Laravel ensures security and data integrity during CRUD operation by enforcing validation rules and sanitizing user inputs, which protects both application and its users. Number 3, describe how you would implement the read operation in Laravel to retrieve and display data from the database using both a controller method and a blade view. To implement the read operation in Laravel, you would create a controller method to retrieve data from the database and blade view to display it. The controller method fetches data from the database and passes it to the blade view, which then to display the information to the user. The separation of concern enhances code organization and readability. Number 4, what is the purpose of the update operation in Laravel, and how would you handle form submissions to modify existing data entries in the database? The update operation in Laravel allows you to modify existing data entries in the database on user input form a form submission. To handle updates, you would create a form pre-populated with the current data of the item you want to edit. When the form is submitted, it sends the updated data to a control method. This method validates the input and user eloquent to find a specific record by its ID and update it with the new data. How can you ensure that delete how can you how can you ensure that delete operation in Laravel is secure, prevents accidentally or unauthorized data removal? What role does validation play in this process? To ensure the delete operation in Laravel is secure, you can implement user confirmation and validation checks before executing the deletion. Implementing these security measures in the delete operation, user confirmation, authorized check, and existence and validation ensures that data is only removed when intended and authorized, thereby safeguarding against accidental or malicious data loss. Assessment number 4. What is the purpose of Google reCAPTCHA and how does it enhance the security of web application when integrated with forms? The purpose of Google reCAPTCHA is to prevent automated bots from submitting forms on websites, thereby enhancing the security of web application. reCAPTCHA distinguishes between human user and bots by presenting challenges that are easy for humans but difficult for automated programs to solve. This helps protect forms from spam and abuse, ensuring that only legitimate users can submit information. Number 2. Describe the process of obtaining and registering reCAPTCHA site and secret keys from Google. Why is it important to update the domain when moving from localhost to a productive environment? To obtain and register reCAPTCHA keys, you must visit the Google reCAPTCHA site, register your application, and specify the domain it will operate on. After registering, you will receive a site key and a secret key. It's important to update the domain when moving from localhost to production because the reCAPTCHA service validate requests based on the specific domain. If the domain is not registered, reCAPTCHA will not function properly in production environment. Number 3. How will you integrate reCAPTCHA into a Laravel form? Outline the steps from installing the necessary package to adding the reCAPTCHA field in the form. To integrate reCAPTCHA into a Laravel form, install a reCAPTCHA package, configure and tweak your site key, and add a reCAPTCHA field to your form. Use, use Composer to install a reCAPTCHA package configuration, add the site key and secret key to the .env file form field in your Blade template. Include the reCAPTCHA widget using the provided directed. Number 4. Explain how to validate reCAPTCHA responses in Laravel. What role do the reCAPTCHA secret keys play in the validation process? To validate reCAPTCHA's response in Laravel, use the secret key to verify the user's response with Google reCAPTCHA API. When a user submits the form, the response token is sent to your server. The server uses the secret key to validate this token by sending a request to Google. If the token is valid, it confirms the user is likely human, allowing the form submission to proceed. Number 5. How can customizing error messages for failed reCAPTCHA attempts improve user experience? Provide an example. How would you handle reCAPTCHA error in Laravel controller? Customizing error message for failed reCAPTCHA attempts can enhance user experience by providing clear guidance on what went wrong. Instead of generic error messages, you can specify that the user failed the reCAPTCHA check. For example, in your Laravel controller, if validation fails, you might redirect back with a message like, please complete the reCAPTCHA to proceed. This informs the user of the specific issue, allowing them to take corrective action. Assessment number 5. What is the purpose of the integrating OTP function into a Laravel application, and how does it enhance security for users? The purpose of integrating OTP functionality in the Laravel application is to provide an extra layer of security during user authentication. One-time password ensure that even if an attacker gains access to a user credential, they cannot log in without temporary OTP sent to the user registered contact method, email or SMS, thereby enhancing security. Number 2, describe the process of generating and sending an OTP via email in Laravel. What configuration steps are needed in the .env file to set up email functionality? Generating and sending an OTP via email involves creating an OTP code, setting up email function in the .env file, and using Laravel's email service to send the OTP. To send an OTP via email, you need to configure SMTP setting like underscore mailer, mail underscore host, mail underscore port. In the .env file, use Laravel mail class or as notification to send the OTP to the user's email. Explain how you can integrate on SMS OTP service using value in Laravel. What configurations are required in the .env file and the controller to send OTP as via SMS. Integrating an SMS OTP service using Twilio requires adding Twilio's SDK, setting up credentials in the .env file, and coding the controller to send OTP as via SMS. Twilio underscore seed, Twilio underscore auth underscore token, and Twilio underscore phone underscore number in the .env file. For authentication in the controller, use the Twilio client to send an SMS that contains the OTP to the user's phone number. Number 4. How can you handle OTP verification in Laravel? Describe the process of validating the OTP and the necessary step to handle success or failure of the verification. Handling OTP verification involves comparing the user-provided OTP with the store-generated OTP. To verify an OTP, you check whether the entered code matches the one stored in the database or session. If the OTP matches, the user authenticated. If it fails, an appropriate error response is given, and you may implement retry limits or expiration checks for security. Number 5. What are some key customization options available when handling OTP, such as error message or retry attempts, and how can this improve the user experience? Key customized option include setting custom error messages, defining OTP expiration times, and limiting retry attempts. Custom error messages help guide users when an OTP fails, improving user experience. Expiration times ensure that OTPs are only valid for a short period, enhancing security. Retry limits prevent brute force attack by limiting the number of allowed attempts.